The last few months will have changed your daily routine in ways big and small. Canadians in every sector have faced challenges and tough choices at work. And that includes people at research institutes who are making the discoveries that keep us safe and healthy. Science and research is our door to a brighter future, and that has never been clearer. But because of the pandemic, many labs have closed or are at risk of imminently closing. So understandably, people are worried about their jobs and their future. So today, we are announcing $450 million to help researchers and research institutions bridge to better times. For universities and affiliated research institutes that have been affected by this pandemic, we will provide temporary support on wages. By delivering this money through federal granting agencies, we will get help out as quickly as possible to the people who need it.
Today, I am announcing that we will be investing $450 million to help researchers and research institutions get through the crisis. These funds will help to maintain the wages of people in conducting research so that they can continue their essential work. We're lucky because Canadian researchers are among the best in the world. Every day, they make discoveries that help us to stay healthy and safe, and we have to support them.
Far too many Canadians have lost their jobs because of COVID-19. As our economy gradually reopens, wherever we can do so safely, we need you back. We need you in your job, on your team, bringing life into our communities and our economy. And that's exactly why we brought in the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy back in March. Because wherever possible, we wanted to keep you connected to the job you love and to the workplace where you contribute every day. When we launched this program, I talked about the neighborhood spots it would support, the local restaurant, the salon, the gym that had been forced to close or seen business dry up. Well, today, a lot of those places are looking towards reopening, and they need to be able to bring back workers and even hire more as this happens. So this morning, I can confirm that we will extend the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy by another 3 months to the end of August. Business owners, please take confidence from this announcement. You now have some runway to catch your breath as you get restarted. So please, bring back your employees. Going forward, we need to make sure that this program keeps working for people, that it keeps encouraging employers to rehire staff and even expand where possible. So over the next month, we'll work with business and labor stakeholders on any adjustments that might be needed. One of the things we'll be looking at is the 30% revenue decline threshold for eligibility. As businesses start up, needing a decline shouldn't be a barrier to growth. I know we'll figure out solutions where needed while continuing to support employers and employees, because that's who this is all about. If you're a business owner, if you're a worker, we're here for you, now and throughout the summer. At the same time, we've also broadened eligibility for this benefit. Minister Morneau will have more details shortly, but these changes will get even more people back on the job. So to business owners who haven't applied yet, go online and do so. The help is there for you.
Today, I can confirm that we will be extending the wage subsidy by 3 months until the end of August. If you are a business owner and you are preparing to reopen your business, this subsidy will be there for you and for your employees. We must ensure that the program continues to help people, that it encourages employers to rehire their workers and even extend their activities as much as possible. So, Over the course of the next month, we will be working with business stakeholders and workers to make any necessary adjustments. And we will be looking in particular at the eligibility threshold, which is a decline in revenue of 30%. When businesses are ready to start up again and even expand, that threshold should not be a barrier to growth. We will also be extending the scope of the wage subsidy to encourage even more people to go back to work. Minister Morneau will have additional details about this later today. Since the month of March, we have been looking to provide more support for parents and workers, students and seniors, and for the industries hardest hit, as well as small businesses. We are helping people who need that help. And today, we are honoring those commitments.
Kicks off this year's hiring period for Canada's summer jobs. The first set of job postings are up on the Job Bank website, and thousands more will be posted over the coming weeks. If you're a student or recent grad, go to jobbank.gc.ca, that's jobbank.gc.ca, or download the Job Bank app to check it out. And tell your friends about it too. If they don't already know, there are lots of opportunities available. These placements mean a paycheck and valuable experience in jobs that are key to our fight against COVID-19. Of course, no one program can single-handedly solve the fact that there are fewer jobs out there because of the pandemic. So, for students and recent grads who still need help, starting today, you can apply for the Canada Emergency Student Benefit. Go to canada.ca to sign up. For parents who receive the Canada Child Benefit and people who get the GST-HST credit, we also have more news to share today. Although everyone should do their best to file their taxes in time for the new June 1st deadline, your benefits won't automatically be cut off if for some reason you miss that date. Your CCB and GST-HST benefits will continue until the end of September. But be sure, in order to keep getting them, you need to file your taxes as soon as you can, so there's enough time for the paperwork to be processed, and you'll be able to continue receiving those benefits beyond September. Si vous êtes étudiant, assurez-vous de consulter le site web.
Do consult the Job Bank website, where we will be putting a first set of postings up today. And if you cannot find a summer job, the Emergency Student Response Benefit will be there for you. You are able to apply starting today. Everyone should try as much as possible to file a tax return by June 1st. But if you're not able to do that in time, your benefits, such as the Canada Child Benefit or the GST credit, will not stop all of a sudden. You will continue to receive them until the end of September. But we are still asking you to file your income tax return as soon as possible, so that we have the time to process your file and so that you can continue to receive those benefits after September. People are going through tough times right now, but by working together and by being there for each other, we will come out of this. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier ministre. On va commencer la période de questions aujourd'hui par le téléphone. Opérateur, première question.
Thank you. Merci. Première question, Hélène Buzetti, Le Devoir. À vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Excusez-moi, j'étais sur silencieux. On a un peu l'impression que plus la reprise commence, plus vous avez une préférence pour la subvention salariale plutôt que la PCU. Est-ce que c'est une perception exacte? Et donc, dans ce contexte, doit-on s'attendre à ce que vous prolongiez également la PCU ou pas?
Can we expect you to extend the CERB or not? The best thing is that people remain connected to their job so that they can go back to work as soon as the economy starts to reopen. And that retains that attachment between employers and their workers. Now, the wage subsidy also will give more money, in many cases, to people than the CERB. That is a assistance we are providing to allow for an economic recovery. And of course, that will be an integral part of the recovery. Now, we are in a situation where millions of Canadians have lost their jobs and not receiving paychecks, and there is no possibility of their benefiting from the wage subsidy because they don't have an employer. So they are benefiting from the CERB. But the fact is that people would be able to use the wage subsidy more if employers rehire them, and they'll even be able to hire new workers as a result of that wage subsidy. And that means ensuring a quick recovery and an efficient one. Follow-up? Yes, so am I to understand, you seem to be saying that the CERB will not really be extended, is that true? Well, we are looking at the fact that millions of Canadians still need the CERB. But of course, with the economic recovery and with fewer and fewer people having lost their jobs as they become rehired, I think we will be able to have more people benefiting from the wage subsidy than the CERB. But again, we will be looking at the situation very carefully, and we will be there for people who need help.
Prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Mélanie Marquis, La Presse. À vous.
Oui. Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. With respect to the problems related to the CERB and the directive to ignore them, what do you intend to do about those problems? Well, I think we had a very clear choice to make at the beginning of this pandemic. Either we would try to get money into the hands of people as quickly as possible and introduce measures to detect fraud and get the money back after the fact, or we could have introduced a system that would have called for very close verifications, checks on every file before sending out any money. But we're in a situation now where people needed the money immediately. So the choice we made, and the only choice that could have been made, was to quickly get money into the hands of all those people who applied for the CERB and signed the attestation. And then afterwards, and that's what we're preparing for now, introducing measures to recollect that money from fraudsters, and they, of course, will suffer the consequences.
Straightforward choice that we had to make from the very beginning. Do we get the money out as quickly as possible to everyone who needed it, and then bring in measures that go back and create consequences and get the money back from people who took it without needing it? Or do we put in place a process that verifies carefully every application so that only those who needed it get it, and nobody had to, and fraudsters wouldn't be able to get it? Well, the problem with the second approach would have been, it would have been months before delivering to the well over 7 million Canadians who needed it the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. In this situation, in this crisis, we made the deliberate choice to get the money out the door to millions of Canadians who needed it, and bring in measures to go after retroactively people who might have tried to defraud the system. The response, in order to keep Canadians safe and healthy, needed to be to get them the money quickly, and that's exactly what we did. But we will ensure that fraudsters or people who got the benefits unfairly or inappropriately will have to pay them back.
En suivi, Mélanie?
Follow up?
Oui, j'en déduis, corrigez-moi si je me
So
trompe, Monsieur
I
Trudeau, mais j'en
guess what you're saying is that things will not change. But my follow-up question has to do with the return of Parliament. Mr. Scheer, again, is demanding a return of Parliament with a limited number of MPs. You said you didn't want that to happen. Has your position changed? Well, we now have a Parliament that meets in person once a week with a limited number of MPs. who only come from a limited number of places around the country. And 2 days a week, we have virtual sessions where members of parliament from all across the country can speak, can represent their communities. So I think this is a balance that is yielding very good results because it allows all members of parliament to express the concerns of their regions and their constituents, not just people who happen to be close to Ottawa. At the same time, we are holding in-person sessions in a safe manner to ensure that the House of Commons continues to operate. We proposed that that continue in that way, but of course we will be working with all the opposition parties to ensure that during this crisis, or in spite of this crisis, or maybe because of this crisis, we continue to defend our democracy and our democratic institutions.
We have a system right now where Parliament sits once a week in person with a limited number of MPs who are highly concentrated around within driving distance from Ottawa, who get to actually be there in person. But 2 more virtual sessions every week where MPs from every corner of the country get to represent the concerns of their communities. That is something that has been extremely effective in making sure that we are hearing from the breadth and scope of concerns across this country and not just those folks who are within driving distance of Ottawa. We've proposed to continue that, and I know there will be discussions with the other parties on the best way to move forward, but we all agree we need to continue with a strong democracy and a functioning parliament in a way that ensures that concerns of Canadians from every part of this country get heard.
Thank you. Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Mike Blanchfield, the Canadian Press. Line open.
Yeah, hello, Prime Minister. We know contact tracing is going to be key when it comes to reopening the economy, but right now the provinces and even some municipalities are all doing this differently. When will we see a national plan for contact tracing, and what will it look like?
I was very pleased to have a great conversation with the premiers last night. It was our 9th virtual First Ministers meeting since the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. And as always, we're working extraordinarily well. We all understand that moving forward with a massive scale up of testing capacity right across the country and contact tracing that goes beyond our own regions and jurisdictions is going to be important, particularly as the economy starts to reopen and Canadians start to carefully travel across provincial borders and from one jurisdiction to the other. It is still important that people stay home as much as possible, even through the reopening, but there will be more travel because of a reopened economy, and we need to make sure that we do have coherence in our approach across the country on both testing and contact tracing, which is something we talked about a lot last night, and we will continue to work together on to make sure that Canadians are covered from coast to coast to coast as we control this pandemic. Okay.
Last night, we had our 9th virtual meeting with premiers since the onset of the COVID-19 outbreak. And we are looking at an important increase in the testing capability and the contact testing across the country. That's very important, and that's the only way to prevent a future outbreak of COVID-19. So we will continue to work together so that as the economy starts to reopen, Canadians will be traveling a little more, not too much, but a little bit more. And at that point, we really must be able to properly manage COVID-19 in a new situation, and we will be working on that.
Yeah, well, what's the timeline for that plan with the Premier's Prime Minister? And also, when do you think Parliament should be expanding beyond one emergency sitting a week so it can deal with legislation other than COVID-19 matters?
First of all, we know that massive testing and effective contact tracing are going to be essential to go along with reopening of the economy. There are a number of places that are starting to look at reopening in different places, and they already know that we need to step up on our testing, on our contact tracing. The federal government is offering to work very closely with the provinces on expanding massively both our testing and our contact tracing, and we certainly hope that the provinces will work with us on that, because everywhere across the country, as we reopen, we need to be hyper vigilant to possible resurgences of COVID-19. On Parliament, I look forward to being able to deal with a broad range of subjects when the time comes. Right now, our focus is rightly almost entirely on COVID-19 and getting Canadians the support necessary to get through this first phase of the crisis, but also making sure the Canadians are properly supported through what will be a difficult and convoluted process of restarting an economy while staying safe from the further spread of COVID-19.
Thank you. Operator, last question on the phone.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Levon Savant, Radio Canada International. Line open.
Yes, hello, Prime Minister. On May 13th, Amnesty International sent you an open letter urging you to review your current policy and practice with the view of rendering Canada fully compliant with its international legal obligations and guidance from the UNHCR updates to the treatment of refugees. What's your response to this open letter, which was signed by people like Lloyd Axworthy and Alan Rock?
Canada has a strong tradition of protecting the most vulnerable around the world, of welcoming people fleeing persecution. They have contributed significantly to Canada's betterment and growth over the years. We have strong values of protecting the most vulnerable and being a welcoming country, while at the same time ensuring the strength and the rigor of our immigration systems and processes. We will continue to defend our values. We will continue to stay true to the way Canadians are open and welcoming while expecting the rules to be followed, and that is something that we will always do.
As a follow-up?
Yes, and so where do you draw the line between protecting the health of Canadians and fulfilling your obligations under the Refugee Convention and allowing refugees to claim asylum in Canada?
My responsibility, first and foremost, as Prime Minister of Canada, is to look out for the well-being, the safety, security of Canadians, and that will always be my top priority. However, in a situation of a global pandemic right now, we know that what we do in Canada is not going to be enough to keep us safe going forward unless we are also part of the global solution, unless we are helping out countries and people around the world in dealing with the pandemic and dealing with this situation in their ways. We will always make sure we're getting that balance right, but first and foremost, my job is to look out for the well-being of Canadians.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Mathieu Goyer de Radio-Canada. Ça a été confirmé que des membres des Forces armées canadiennes ont contracté le coronavirus en servant dans les CHSLD au Québec. Est-ce que ça change la mission des Forces armées dans les CHSLD?
Does that change the role of the Army in these homes? And what does this mean for their colleagues? The men and women in the Canadian Armed Forces have always been ready to take risks in order to protect Canadians. They have always been there to serve in difficult times and in terrible situations. And they are again doing that in our long-term care facilities. Our responsibility as a government and a society is to ensure that we are doing everything we can to minimize the risks that members of the military face in their jobs, whether it is overseas or here at home. And unfortunately, as we all know, this is a situation where there are risks. So we will be ensuring and reinforcing any measures so that our military members stay safe as much as possible. And of course, we will need to ensure that COVID-19 does not spread within the Canadian Armed Forces. So we will be taking any necessary action to do that.
The women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces have always stepped up to do difficult and dangerous things when called upon. Their service to Canada, whether it be overseas or here at home, has always been exemplary, and our responsibility as Canadians, as a government, is to ensure that we are giving them the proper support to minimize the risks that they undertake to serve Canada. There are always risks in what they do, and they go into that knowingly and willingly, and that is why we offer them our deepest gratitude every day. At the same time, we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to protect them, so we will look at the protocols in place and see if and how they can be strengthened, as well as ensuring that cases of COVID-19 don't spread throughout the Canadian Armed Forces and others who are serving their country.
Et en suivi, Radio-Canada a publié l'histoire récemment d'une
Radio-Canada talked about a woman who is pregnant who wanted to bring her husband over the border, who is American. Now, apparently, her husband was turned back at the border. Now, how do you react to the fact that the CBSA is applying more restrictive measures than what are provided for? Well, we know it's very difficult right now for families that are separated and where people are mourning in Nova Scotia and elsewhere for loved ones or members of their family who have died in long-term care homes without being able to see them or say goodbye to them. This requires a lot of sacrifices and puts people in very difficult situations. And the border agents, like everyone else, are trying to apply the rules consistently, but there are situations that arise where, unfortunately, they've never seen that particular circumstance, and we are trying to adjust as best possible.
On the CF members contracting COVID-19, there's a veterans group that's saying that forces members should be given the same kind of, given the danger of this deployment, they should be given the same kind of benefits they would receive, say, overseas, danger pay, things like that. Is that something that your government would be open to? I
think that is something that the Canadian Armed Forces are certainly looking at.
Okay. Can I ask you then about the wage subsidy that you were talking about today? You haven't seen businesses rehiring people at the level that you wanted. So does that say to you that there's a problem with the program, or do you think that businesses are just worse off than you thought?
I think there is a reflection that this is an unprecedented situation, and there is a lot of uncertainty about what the coming months might bring. As businesses are trying to figure out when they might be able to reopen, are looking at numbers of cases and trying to imagine what that might mean for their business in the coming weeks, in the coming months, they are busy trying to juggle a whole bunch of different factors that they have very little window into. That is why it was so important for us to announce that we will be continuing with the wage subsidy over the next 3 months until the end of the summer, to give businesses the certainty to know that we'll be there for them. As the economy reopens, there's a danger of unintended consequences. I mentioned that, for example, if part of the eligibility criteria for getting the wage subsidy is a decrease of 30% of your business, we wouldn't want people who are getting back their business going to feel like they have to hold back on their growth, on their expansion, on their rehiring in order to be able to continue benefiting from the wage subsidy. So we're going to work with industry, work with labor, work with stakeholder groups to make sure we're getting it right. But that wage subsidy is going to be a really important part of the coming months of recovery. We will continue to be there for businesses to give them the certainty to know that they can rehire their workers and get back to work in a very careful way as the economy reopens.
Hi, Prime Minister. Chris Logue with Global News. Canadians with underlying health conditions are concerned they may have to go back to work early and be putting their health at risk if the CERB isn't extended. Will there be any measures put in place that the most vulnerable to serious illness aren't put at risk?
Our focus throughout this entire pandemic has been the safety and security of Canadians. We know that some Canadians are more vulnerable to COVID-19 because of age, because of underlying health factors, and every step of the way we have focused on giving them the support we need, that they need, and we will continue to do so.
What are the specific measures on the table for those workers?
We're going to continue to look at the situations that, as they come up, as we support people who need it during this COVID-19 crisis. We've delivered the CERB to over 7 million Canadians. We've seen millions of workers get on the wage subsidy. There are measures in place for so many different groups because we know that being there for each other is part of who Canadians are, but also how we're going to get through this, and that's what we'll stay focused on. Nous savons que nous devons être là.
We know that we have to be there for each other, particularly for the most vulnerable members of our society. And that's why we introduced measures to provide funding and support for millions of Canadians. And we will continue to help them during this pandemic. Our top priority will always be the health and safety of Canadians, because without healthy Canadians, there can be no economic recovery.
CTV National News. For Canadians who have loved ones in the States, is family reunification considered essential? I mean, are they essential enough to cross that border at this point? I know that some CBSA officers are saying no to them and not letting them across. And could this be negotiated as part of ongoing border talks?
We know that Canadians are facing extremely difficult situations because of COVID-19, whether it be families who can't grieve the loss of a parent or a loved one because they cannot gather and they cannot hold funerals because of COVID-19. These are things that are extraordinarily difficult. Families are stretched across the country and unable to see each other. People are stuck overseas, and despite the hundreds of repatriation flights we've brought, there are others who simply can't come home. This is a difficult situation, but every step of the way, we need to do what is necessary right now to keep Canadians safe. That is our priority, to control the spread of COVID-19, to make sure that we get it under control in Canada and that we prevent importation from other countries. That continues to be the priority that Canada has, and I know it's difficult on Canadians, but we need to continue to be very, very careful, because if we make a wrong step in the coming weeks, everything we've sacrificed over the past 2 months could be for nothing if we see another massive surge of COVID-19. So we will continue to be extremely vigilant and extremely careful about how we move forward. Okay.
We know that these are very difficult situations for many, many families across the country that are separated from their loved ones who happen to be at the other end of the country or in another country. They cannot mourn their parents or grandparents who are in trouble in our long-term care centers, because we have to stem the spread of COVID-19. And that simply has to continue to be our priority, to do everything we can to control COVID in Canada and prevent other cases arising when we all are successful. But we must have as our top priority the protection of all Canadians.
Minister, immediate family members in the U.S. should not go to the border?
We have established rules around traveling across borders and international travel. They need to be respected because we have to keep Canadians safe. We have to control the spread, and we will be doing that.
Prime Minister, my second question is about, talks are beginning between the unions and the federal government about getting back to work. Example, Service Canada, for example, to do that safely. Do we know when that's going to happen? And I know many Canadians are struggling to find support online.
I will highlight that the federal government did not shut down. Service Canada offerings are made online or via telephone, even though we closed the physical centres. The services that the government continues to offer to Canadians continue. We've seen that in exceptional measures like the Canada Emergency Response Benefit or the wage subsidy or the students benefit or the seniors benefit or the fishers benefit or the list of things that the public servants in this country have continued to work on and delivered for Canadians during this crisis is extraordinary, and we need to again and again recognize and thank the incredible public servants who deliver these measures while facing the same kinds of fears and challenges, whether it's concerns about COVID-19 or dealing with working at home with a young family around. Our public servants have been exemplary through this, and we will continue to work with them and with their unions to ensure that they are kept safe as we move forward.
Merci beaucoup. C'est ce qui met fin à la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui.
Merci tout le monde.
All right, that is the Prime Minister.